Florida raised him, but the JIT camps made him. Pno wasn't just a Crip. He was a savage before the ink dried on his intake papers. JIT camps couldn't tame him. Confinement couldn't stop him. He was wild, out of control, and ready to crash out at any second. But when he got out, the war didn't end. It just went digital. Pno hit the road to Boston, strapped with rage, pulling up, ready to knuckle up. This wasn't rap beef. This was real street energy spilling into Wi-Fi. But somehow between the chaos and the clout came his second child, and that moment hit harder than any fade. Now, the same man who was ready to die over a YouTube comment is living for his family. Changed? Maybe. You'll just have to see. This is DOC TV Unleashed, and this is Florida JIT Camps. What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV Unleashed. If you're tapping into this channel for the first time and haven't watched any videos, I bring people on this channel that have been to prison, jail, and have lived a crazy life and have made it out to share their experience. If you don't recognize this guest, his name's Pno. He's done a lot of time in the Florida Department of Corrections, and he's here today on DOC TV Unleashed to share his story, man. For the people that don't know who you are, though, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself, tell them your name and where you're from.
My name's Pno from Pompano, Florida. Over 10 years incarcerated, Florida Department of Corrections. Here to speak and create a change.
So before the change, you grew up in Florida, and I know you went to JIT camp. So how did your life start out, man, when you were at a young age growing up?
I've always been bad growing up, brother. I've been getting in trouble since I was about 12 years old, going in and out from juvenile. I actually went to juvenile about 20 times before, ultimately graduating to the county jail and youthful offender prisons. People say that the environment affects you. I guess that may be the case. I was in a pretty bad environment, and everybody around me was into the same stuff I was into. And so crime came early for me. Long story short, and it came with small steps. Like the age of 12 was, throwing a rock through a conveyance. So they said that I threw a rock through a car window or something like that at 12 years old. And then at 13, it was a battery charge. And then at 14, it was another battery charge. And then at 15, it was some burglaries. So it kind of graduated and progressed all the way till I was 18. And, I thought that I would still get the same slap on the wrist that I got when I was a shorty. You know what I mean? 20 times in and out as a juvenile. And then when you hit 18 and you start catching these same charges, you're not prepared for what comes with it. They start talking 15, 20 years per chance. When you were just 17, 16, they were talking, maybe 12 months in the juvenile program.
When that was going on and when you caught the charges and you knew that you were going to be going to prison, did you know at that time, were you under YO status at that time?
Yeah. So my first time catching charges, I was under YO status. I actually had a public defender. It was my first time in the adult system. I was, fresh in. I was what they call a new cock. And as much as I wanted to think I knew something from all the juvenile stints that I did, I knew nothing about, the big boys. Ultimately, I had a public defender. Like I said, I was fresh at it, so I didn't know that, paid lawyer goes a long way. And my public defender made me open plea under the youthful offender sentence, which means that the judge can't max you out no more than 6 years. And when I think about it, I only had a burglary. You know what I mean? I could have got some probation, maybe with a paid lawyer or something like that, but I was young. Didn't really have nobody in my corner like that besides my mom, who wasn't really wealthy like that, wealthy enough to hire a private attorney. And the system basically got me at the age of 18. They were like, they can't bring up your juvenile priors when you're 18. They can't use it against you. But what they can do is mention it and say, that he was a bad kid. And that's exactly what happened. And the judge gave me 3 years Florida State Prison, followed by 2 years community control. So ultimately, he gave me 5 out of the 6, and I did 3 years in youthful offender. It was, I spent about 1.5 years in the county jail before going, but I did a 3-year sentence in youthful offenders from Lancaster to Lake City.
So when you were in jail, I know back, I'm thinking back when I was in jail, man, when everybody would talk about JIT camp, like in the dorm being like, oh man, you're going up that road and you're a YO, like they are.
Yeah.
So was that going on in your county? And what was going through your head knowing you're going into that shit, bro? Cause that shit's wild.
So I'm gonna share a little story with you. My first time going to, ultimately to a wild camp. Of course, we all hear these stories in the county jail. These are the notorious stories. You're gonna have to pop off on the biggest person you see. Don't let nobody talk to you any type of way, because then they're gonna start taking your food or your commissary, and gangs and locks and socks, and you hear all these war stories and stuff. I was kind of mentally prepared for it from the juvenile stints that I had. I had to fight a lot in juvenile programs and stuff like that. So I was mentally prepared. But when I got to South Florida Reception Center, and I was sitting, when you come to South Florida Reception Center in B dorm, there's these little concrete slabs out front of the rec yard. And I was sitting there it's a sheet with all your stuff tied up in the sheet. And I'm sitting there with 4 or 5 other people, and everybody's coming in off the rec yard. Right. So as everybody's coming in, it's running through my head. Now, this is my first time. It's running through my head. Don't let nobody look at you crazy. If they look at you crazy, pop off on them. Leave your stuff right here and pop off on them. But really, none of that shit really went down like that. I ended up right as they were coming off the rec yard and I was getting into the dorm, it was about to be count time. So I went into the room with my cellie, and my cellie, basically, he had a lot of pool. He had a life sentence. And this was shocking, because this was back in 2009. They didn't separate you in your cell according to your time in Florida Department of Corrections. So back in 2009, you could have 5 years and be in the cell with a lifer, right? So that's how it was for me. I was in the cell with this dude, Reek. And at first I didn't know he was a lifer. He was, scooping me up, letting me know, the ins and the outs, when chow is, when this is, don't let nobody step on your toes, and you my bunkie, you straight. And a lot of people were like that. If they get a bunkie, they feel protective for their bunkie. And I guess Reek kind of felt protective of me. Like I'm his fresh bunkie. I'm fresh to jail. He's scooping me up. He's letting me know, hey, this is how it goes. This is how it is. Anybody try you, you pop off, you grid them. We have a grid over in the corner. We fight under the stairs, this, that, and the third. So he's basically giving me game that without him, I would have kind of been lost. I ended up getting into Reek's story, and it was a crazy story, bro. He ended up, he got a life sentence for shooting his girlfriend by accident.
Damn.
Yeah, so it's a wild story. He was going back and forth with his girlfriend, because Reek used to like to tote guns, and he was going back and forth with his girlfriend about keeping guns in the house. And one day he came home and she tried to pull the gun away from him, and he tried to yank it back, and a shot went off and hit her right in the face. And they sentenced him to life for that. And we were dumb young, you know what I mean? Reek was like, I think he was like 19. I was about 19. So we're both, really young in the system. But it was just a wild experience all around the board. You got to be ready for it. And these stories you hear in the county jail about, when you get there, you're going to have to grid. It's factual. When you get there, you're going to have to grid. You're going to have to grid. And you can't let nobody step on your toes or, try you. More or less, the reception center, when I got there, I didn't have to grid immediately because it's a reception center. Plus, a lot of people knew me. I had a cool ass bunkie who had a lot of rank in the dorm. Like I said, Reek had a lot of rank in the dorm. He had been in that dorm 3 months already. And it's a reception center. So somebody being in that dorm that long, they end up developing some type of rank.
In JIT camp, what would you say is the percentage of people that go and become victims?
50%.
Damn. Okay.
I would say a good 50%, but it doesn't happen until you get to your main camp. When you get, I was a gang member before I went to prison on my first time. Like I said, a lot of juvenile stints. I've been around the block once or twice, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I was a gang member before I went. And at the reception center, there's really no gang politics like that. It's more home team, like who's from Broward, who's from Dade, who's from Palm Beach, who's from Fort Myers. But when I got to Lancaster, it was gang banging. That the when I got and it flipped so fast. Within 3 years, it flipped so fast because when I first got there, Lancaster houses about 1,000 people. Out of about 1,000 people, there were about 500 gang members, and out of 500 gang members, about 250 of them were Crips and folks, and a gang called Cutthroat from Jacksonville, which we were all tied flags. So we were the deepest thing on the compound. But when I left Lancaster, the Zoes and the Bloods were the deepest thing on the compound. They were about 250 deep. But getting into the YO camp, as soon as you get there, you're going to get a TOH off bat. Like, it doesn't matter who vouches for you, what homeboy vouches for you. You gonna get that TOH.
Can you walk the people through that may not know what that is, exactly what a TOH is?
So a TOH is pretty much a test of heart. It could be anything. Honestly, I've seen TOHs where, for instance, we had a homie in the dorm, and this was at Lancaster. This was at a youthful offender camp, and technically, sometimes you don't even have to throw hands for your test of heart. And I'm going to give an example. We had a homie when I was at Lancaster that one of the homies was kind of suspect about. He felt like, he was only hanging around the homies to eat and, food. He didn't really love the movement, and, he was just, using the homies. That's what he felt like. And he also felt like he wasn't going to stand on an issue if he got pressed. So that same homie that was suspect of him went and hollered at somebody from the Bloods and said, hey, because we had a mutual respect. A lot of people might not know that, they might think, oh, Crips and Bloods in the same dorm, they're at war 24/7. Nah, we had a mutual respect. Don't get it wrong. There was wars, but there was more of a mutual respect. And one of our homies went to one of the Bloods and was like, hey, gather 3 of your homies and press my brother. Press him in the kitchen. When he goes to the kitchen, get him in the corner and press him. And they did exactly that. And long story short, they thought he wasn't going to stand on 10. He stood on all 10. 4 Bloods pressed him, and he was like, what's up? He put his hands up, and he was ready to fight. And then the other homie came in and was like, nah, you good. So he really didn't even have to fight. He was being observed, and he didn't know he was being observed. He thought it was a spur of the moment situation. I'm gonna have to stand down with 4 Olas, So
that's a good example.
Yeah.
What's the other one?
The other one is you're gonna have to fight. I had a bad TOH. So I had a TOH when I got to the compound. The Crips notified me and let me know that my set wasn't, a set on the compound. And they basically told me, you got to roll or fold. And I had no idea what the fuck. I was a street gang banger. I didn't know nothing about this chain gang politics. I didn't even know what roll or fold meant, right?
Right.
And the homie was like, man, you got to roll or fold. You either got to roll to insane Crip or you got to fold your flag. And I was like, we ain't doing neither of that, right? And the homie was like, all right, bet. Well, then you're going to have to 336. And I was like, all right. I was a street gangbanger. I wasn't a prison gangbanger. So I didn't know what a fucking 336 was. And the homie's like, you're going to have to fight 3 of us for 36 seconds flat. So I'm like, all right, bet. I get in the grid. It ended up being 6 people for about 49, maybe 50 seconds because it was 3 Crips and it was 3 GDs that joined in because we and a lot of people might be like, that's crazy. You got jumped by some GDs too. They ain't got no business in it. But it was all about the politics and where we were at. The GDs were heavily tied with us. Every time we seen a GD or IGD, any type of folk set, we shook up with them on the compound. Like we literally locked the sea with their pitchfork. If they went to war, we went to war. It was all about numbers. So I ended up getting my ass motherfucking handed to me by 6 people that was supposed to be 3. And I latched on to one. All I remember is latching on before I got, ultimately beat the hell up. I latched on to one of them and his name was JoJo. And I had him like right here by the collar and I'm hitting him like this. And as I'm hitting him, I'm getting fucking boots in the back of my head, bro. I'm getting mollywopped. They're swinging off the bunk, hitting me because I showed disrespect. At the end of the day, I came to this compound and they told me I had to roll or fold, and I told them neither of them. You know what I mean? And I got my ass whooped, but I ended up literally the next day having to go to the rec yard and sit down with the head, and the head was like, "We're gonna allow your set on the compound because of what you put in that grid." So it was a crazy TOH, but I didn't have to roll or fold.
Was there ever a time in your JIT sentence, like when you were doing time, where there was peace and you like actually could get into routine? And
there was tons of times, man. Bro, listen, there was tons of times where, it didn't last long, but there was tons of times where there were vibes, like, big vibes. Like we had, a little sack come in and all the different gangs are laughing and joking and cracking jokes on each other. You got to understand, you're talking about 74 jits inside of an open bay dorm. Regardless of what gang you're from, somebody's going to be cool with somebody from the other side. And there were times where, for hours straight, everybody in the dorm laughing, kikiing, cracking jokes and this, that, and the third. And then the next week, somebody in G dorm fired up somebody's brother. And now there's tension in the air. We're not cracking jokes no more. It was an unbalanced bid. It wasn't like you could just break down and get comfortable the whole bid, but there were parts where it flew by. It was, we're kids.
I think it's so hard, like for other people that haven't done time in Florida, because I've been interviewing people that like Cali and dude, they don't, for them to hear like 74 people in a dorm, all different gangs vibing, like that would never go down in other states. It's just so crazy how Florida what do you think is the answer to the problem in the Florida Department of Corrections with the state that it's in?
Staffing, AC, air conditioning is definitely a factor. They've been, slowly putting climate control in certain prisons, but again, about 50% don't have air conditioning. So that's a major factor. The food, I've been to camps where the trays are scarce. You know what I mean? Like if you didn't have some type of hustle or movement going on, you were losing some weight on that compound.
Facts.
Ultimately, I think it all boils down to staffing. They need to, raise the bar when it comes to, and this is coming from an inmate's perspective, from an ex-inmate. I think they need to raise the bar for correctional officers when it comes to their pay, number one, because they get paid like shit to come in there and watch murderers all day. Fixing the staffing problem is number one. That would create a big change because a lot of Florida prisons are understaffed.
How was the staff in JIT camp compared to the staff? Yeah, you did adult prison
completely too, different. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, completely.
So can you explain that? Because I've been to CFRC and you're in doing your shit and you see the jits and they're getting mollywopped if they even look somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So what did you experience as far as like what you've seen from the guards?
Oh man, I've been slapped by a guard, man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I had to get slapped in the back of the head. So we had a guard named UFC. And his name was UFC. And if you did something he didn't like, whether it be, he caught you smoking in the dorm, because back when I went to the Youthful Offender Prison, cigarettes were on the canteen. They were still in the canteen. We're talking about 2008, 2009. And so if he caught you smoking in the dorm, he would pull you up to behind the officer station and he would let you know, you want to get slapped in the head or you want to go 30 seconds in the mop closet with me. He was a big dude. Man, there's no way to explain how different it was because I would be here for days. It was so different because the correction officers in the adult system, they show respect. Most of them, 90%, or I'm gonna say 85%, they're gonna give you respect because they know that their life can ultimately end inside this facility. Perchance to the YO camps, these jits, a lot of them when you go to like Lancaster and Lake City, you have under 10-year sentence, and a lot of these jits are going home. And I've seen the officer tell one of the jits pull his pants up. For instance, we were at the chow hall one time, and the officer said, "Pull your pants up," because dude was sagging his pants, and he was like that kind of The officer literally grabbed him, threw him up against the wall, grabbed his pants and pulled it up for him. When the JIT turned around and tried to go like this, 5 different officers on the ground. One's holding his head back while they're putting mace in his eyes like this. Literally, he's already on the ground, hands behind his back. One's holding his head up while they're putting mace in his eyes, and they're punching him and putting him in shock. Bro, they used to beat the shit out of us. Long story short, they had zero respect for youthful offenders. There was an officer named 5 or Better. And if you've been to Lancaster, you remember him. Everybody remembers him, 5 or Better. And like, for instance, if you were on the way to the canteen and you were talking in line and he caught you talking in line when he said no talking in line, 5 or Better would tell you, step out of line. And you'd be like, oh, shit, you step out of line. He said, now pick 5 of your homeboys. What you mean pick 5 of my homeboys? Pick 5 of your homeboys to go to confinement with you. Well, literally just for talking in line type shit. Yeah, man.
That's
so he would
crazy.
Make you pick 5 of your homeboys. They called him 5 or Better. It was some wild shit, and that's just examples of youthful offender prison. The officers were wild, bro.
Yeah,
and when I was at Lancaster, not to mention, like there was really no black officers. Like all the officers were white. They were all out of the sticks. It was the country. It was nasty. They were fucking assholes. But then when I got to my second YO camp, Lake City, there was a little more respect. The officers, they had a little more respect. It was a private camp. They had a little more respect. It wasn't as bad as Lancaster. Lancaster was horrible. I've never seen so much officer-inmate disrespect in my life.
What was your plan getting out of JIT camp and being done with your sentence and going back to the street?
I mean, I like to say that I had a plan, and that, I like to say like when I was in my cell and I was getting ready to get released for those 3 years, I would be like, I ain't never coming back to this shit, and I ain't never doing nothing again. And I specifically remember this one officer. His name was Officer Whitaker, and he was an older white gentleman with like sandy hair, like sandy gray hair. I was bad as fuck. I won't lie to you. When I got released off that 3 years, I got released from confinement. I was bad as fuck. I was catching DRs left and right. I didn't give a fuck. I was already maxed out on my time. I got sentenced to 36 months. I did the whole 36 months, 0 game time. This officer, he opened up my flap, and it was about a month before I was going home. And he opened up my flap, and we were going back and forth. And I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going home. And he looked at me and he said, let me tell you something. He said, I've seen 1,000 of you. He said, you'll be back within a couple months. And I shit you not, I got released and I was back in 5 months. I was back facing a 15 mandatory in 5 months. And I'll never forget what that officer said, because he called it out. He was just shedding wisdom on me. He was letting me know, I've seen 1,000 of you. You're going to get out and you're going to do the same shit with that attitude that you have. You're going to get out and you're going to do the same shit, and I'll see you again. And sure enough, I got out with the same attitude and did the same shit. I'll never forget that. There's definitely, I got out head first, basically. I didn't give a fly. I went in at 18. I got out at 21. So really, I was still definitely young-minded.
What did you end up getting sentenced to as an adult?
As an adult, I got the bottom of my guidelines, which was a 12-year sentence, 7 years Florida State prison, followed by 5 years probation. And that was 5 months after my release. So I was only out after them 3 years for 5 months before having to sit in the county jail for 2 more years, fighting a new charge, and then ultimately getting sentenced to a 12-year sentence, 7 followed by 5.
Damn, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah. It was a reality check, bro. And I tell people this shit all the time. For some people, it takes 7 days. For some people, it takes 7 months. For some people, it takes 7 years. You know what I mean? For some people, it takes 70 years before they realize what the fuck they're doing and, the path they're on.
So when do you think it was that you came to that realization?
Not even on my second release, brother. Like even when I got out the second time, I didn't fully understand what life was about. I still had the mentality of a person that was incarcerated. I still had the mentality of a gang member that was incarcerated. I still had the mentality that if somebody looks at me wrong, I have to check them. I still have the mentality that everything is based off of respect, which it isn't. You know what I mean? In the chain gang, you know, everything is based off of respect in the adult system. And when you get out, you still hold that same bar because you're a little bit institutionalized. And I had that bar still held there, but you have to realize, you know, it took me having another kid and being around both my kids 24/7, becoming a full dad, you know, all day, every day, to realize that that shit is for the birds, bro. Like, for the birds. The shit I did when I was 15, 16, 18, even the shit I did when I got out of prison on my second bid when I was 27, I would not repeat right now when I'm 36.
And you're talking about like stuff like driving to Boston and
Yeah, of course.
that type stuff, or
Yeah,
what?
so everybody remembers me when I first came to YouTube. I was a hothead. I was fresh out of prison, fresh out. So ultimately, I had the same mentality. Like I said, I had that prison mentality.
Yeah.
And it took, like I said, it took me becoming, you know, a full-time dad, you know, a couple years after my release to fully realize, hey, you keep fucking around, you're gonna wind up back for a third time. I don't know, man. I guess that's what did it, bro, because I don't even I don't get involved in shit no more. Like, I don't go outside like that and hang out with people like that. Like, I pull up on certain homies and, you know, that's about that. That's as far as it goes. I'm not kicking the block. I'm not going out. If I'm going out somewhere, I'm going out with my wife and kids. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, it's easier, it's safer for me like that because I know I'm a crash out and I'm a hothead. And I had to learn that, you know, after being released from my second time and going through, you know, this shit on the internet, which everybody's seen. I had to learn that, you know, you got to sit your ass down or you're going to end up back.
Yeah, bro. And honestly, when I first started watching this YouTube prison genre, like when I saw, you know, K-Frog, Death, and when all that was, I mean, you guys were popping it when it first started, and to now, dude, like you're like a different person, honestly. Like,
yeah, they're all soft still. I mean, that part of me will never change. They're all soft as hell. But again, like I said, I had to realize as a father that, you know, there's gonna be people like that, bro.
Everywhere.
I'm not in the chain gang. It's not like I can slide to your dorm, you know, during chow time and put the beats on you. You know what I mean? I can't do that out here in the free world. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that, you know, you just sometimes just gotta let people talk. Everybody's not built the same way, and ultimately, it's about a legacy and the family that I've created. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That comes before anything. And like I said, that's part of growing up. When you grow up, you realize that family, those little ones, they come before anything. They first.
You have a YouTube channel. I want you to be able to tell the people about that. What's your direction now that, you know, you handled all your shit with YouTube for your channel?
So we're fully monetized right now, and we're heading in the true crime direction. More or less, we're heading in the direction of Florida true crime and what be like for these killers on the inside of Florida Department of Corrections, because a lot of people follow these high-end cases. For example, you know, a lot of people followed the Wade Wilson case. A lot of people followed the Stephen Stearns case. And these are individuals who will be incarcerated in the state of Florida. And a lot of people don't know what it's like on the inside. So I feel like it's my position to shed light on what it will be like for these people, these individuals. Some of them are sickos. You know, some of them deserve the worst of the worst. But people are curious what will happen to this dude when he comes to prison. And I basically just shed light on everything that goes on in prison, whether it be, you know, a mass killer, or whether it be, you know, inhumane conditions, or like my last live, we just covered Georgia Department of Corrections and the violence in Georgia Department of Corrections, which is, you know, topping charts. A lot of people don't know that, you know, like Georgia Department of Corrections right now has 74 murders, homicides for this year alone.
Damn, that's
this
crazy
year alone. Those are crazy numbers. Those are crazy. We're talking about Florida. It's an average of, maybe 10 to 15 homicides a year. You know what I mean? This is Georgia, 74 homicides, and we're only in August.
What is your thoughts on what do you think Wade Wilson is going through right now in prison? Because he's moved back now to Union, right, and is on death row. Yep. What do you think? Like, I mean, that wing is like that he's on.
He's stressed the fuck out right now because ultimately, when you find yourself on death row, and I've never been on death row, but you're around 100 other people who are sentenced to die. So you can seek refuge and confidence in other people. There's people on the wing who, were sentenced to die 25 years ago, and they're still walking around the wing, under an appeal. So ultimately, those people, I would imagine, give hope to people like Wade Wilson, who's sitting on death row. But right now, as of right now, he's stressed the fuck out because he's on disciplinary confinement right now. When you're in confinement, you don't get, the phone privileges, you don't get canteen visitation, that leisure material that you get. So I 100% believe Wade Wilson is stressed the fuck out right now. He's,
well, I hope he is.
I hope he is too.
Plug in your YouTube, tell them your name and how they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. Just type in P_NO on YouTube. You'll find me. I'm not on any other platform besides Instagram. And on Instagram, it's Raw Talk 08. And we also have another Instagram called AGB Raw Talk, which, if you miss those prison shorts and those exclusive shorts, you can find them over there on AGB Raw Talk. That's also another one of our platforms, which is currently at about 40,000 followers.
Damn, that's good, bro. Yeah, you're getting up there in all your platforms now.
Yeah, trying to.
I bet K-Frog's so mad.
Oh, yeah.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on again and sharing your story. And if you're tuning in for the first time, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn your post notifications on all, so every time I do drop content, you can hear it first. And with that, this is DOC TV Unleashed, and we're out.